So here I'm going to cover this Cybex VR2 dual axis pull down. There are a couple of handle options here. You'll notice when I get this in frame that there's these kind of this way handles, and then there's the this way handles. For almost everybody, I want you on the this way handles, these kind of narrow ones. So what you want to do is I have a label here about applying and tightening a seat belt. If you are tall enough to reach the handles with your hands when you're sitting down, that means you need to put this seat belt on. What that does is help keeps you in the seat a little bit better when you're getting way up to this part of the range of motion. If you can't reach these sitting down, then you by definition don't need this seat belt quite as much, and you just got to make sure that this thigh pad is nice and secure. So that's one of the things. The only setting on this is making sure that this thigh pad is in the right spot. For me, that's usually about 3. Then if you're not tall enough, what you can do is you can grab it while you're standing and sit down with it. What you want to do is you want to be leaned back just enough to where these things don't clang you in the head, and you can meet these handles at the level of your chest. I don't want to then rock forward. It's going to get loud. Rock forward and then come down. I want to make sure that I hold this position with my torso and I'm pulling handles to chest, chest to handles, and then returning back up. I don't want to see any elbow flary stuff. I don't want to see any crunchy stuff to bring the weight down. And again, I don't want to see you kind of rocking back and forth as you do it. All this stuff needs to stay pretty static. On any kind of pulling exercise like this, one of the most important and helpful tips is to fully 1000% convince yourself that you're doing a pull up instead of a pull down. If I really think that I'm trying to pull my body up over something, it will prevent a lot of the crunchy, elbow flary kind of stuff that we want to avoid on this. So if you fully convince yourself, even close your eyes, that you're trying to do a pull up, that will help you kind of stay in line with the exercise a little bit better. If you do want a little bit of width, or I've told you might want some width, there's these little squat wedges, which are my unofficial way of kind of placing these in between these handles to provide a little bit of width. And so they go right here. I'll show you up close and personal. You can see right in there, these sit just underneath these little knob stoppers right here for the arms, and they kind of run down like this towards this part of the machine. Let me get this set up again, like that. That's close enough. And that'll provide you with a little bit more width here with your hands if you want, which means you don't have to lean back quite as far, and you can actually just pull yourself straight up in between these handles. What you want to try to do too when you get to the top of this is you want to almost reach your shoulders if you can. So I'm reaching my shoulders up, I'm pulling them down to initiate the movement, and then I'm coming all the way down here. This machine gets nice and easy at the bottom because of my adjustments in here underneath that belt. So you got to make sure you go nice and slow. Right when you think you're going to get stuck, it'll start getting easier, and then you can actually finish this motion pretty well. Now these other handles, this is called a Cybex dual axis pull down because there's, you guessed it, 2 axes, which allows you to move the handles out this way. It gets pretty intense on your neck, and I don't like it very much. You can mess around with it if you feel like you want to, where you kind of start narrow, come down, when you get to your head, you pull out wide. Now the issue is that these axes that pivots around are at an angle facing in, which means you have to actually push the handles out to get those handles out that way, which means you're providing resistance in an opposite direction as you usually would in a pulling exercise, which is why I'd prefer you to just use the spacers, create that space, and then you can use those handles if you want instead of having to manage that whole nonsense going on. So one more time from the top here, arms up here, I'm looking up, I'm thinking about pulling my chest and my body up over this bar, and then this comes down to my chest, again, not crunching, not flaring, not coming wider, getting up to the top, reaching, and then unreaching, and pulling down like so. And then when you're done with it, especially if you're short, you can kind of stand up with the handles to get those things all the way up to the top.